Ash, would you like for me to take that for you?
No, I'll be good. My computer's taking a little bit longer to load, but
Okay.
I've got what I need.
Okay, perfect.
Good evening. Councilor Crawford is here. I apologize for being late.
Oh, you're good, Carl. Thank you.
I'm on the road, so I'll be on mute.
Okay.
Linda, while we're waiting, can someone prepare to share the financials for me? I'm on my phone. I haven't made it home yet.
Okay.
Not share them, present them for me. Sorry.
Okay, well, we'll have Ash do that.
Okay.
Um,
Are we ready for roll call?
you know what, Ash? I'm
Yes,
just
we
gonna
are.
go
Yep,
ahead.
we are ready.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. Alrighty, so Chair Hughes,
Present.
Vice Chair Doe. Okay.
He
Oh,
is
right, he's not
excused.
here. Right, he's excused. Treasurer Mullins.
Present.
Excellent. Secretary Adams Lee.
Present.
Excellent. Councilmember Daniels. Okay. Councilmember Crawford.
Present.
Excellent. And then Councilmember Nadi.
Present.
Excellent. And then Councilmember Winston. Okay. And then Councilmember Dukes. Alrighty. And then Councilmember DeHere. Okay. And then Senator Fate. Alrighty. And Representative Frazier. Okay. And then Representative Hudson.
Present.
Excellent. That ends roll call. Thank you all so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If we can have somebody approve the adoption of the meeting agenda. I don't believe we have any additional items. So I'll entertain a motion to adopt the meeting agenda.
Councilmember Nadi, so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Mullins.
Okay.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? You can either unmute or type in the chat. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Any abstention? Same sign. Perfect. Motion carries. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read through the April 23rd meeting minutes from 2020 or April 23rd. I'm sorry, April 2023 meeting minutes. Were there any additions or corrections? And hearing none, I will entertain a motion to accept our approval of the April 2023 minutes.
Councilmember Nadi, so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Dukes.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Either unmute or type in the chat. Aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Any abstention? Same sign. All right, motion carries. Thank you all so much. I'm going to turn it over to Treasurer Mullins for the financial report.
Alrighty, and this is staff member Ash Masana. I'll be sharing my screen for
Thanks.
Treasurer Mullins. Of course. Give me 1 second here. Alrighty, and please let me know if you're unable to see the screen.
I can, but can you scroll up, please?
Yeah, I've
Everyone
actually
can see
scrolled
the
up as far
full-
as I can go. Would you like me to zoom in a little bit more?
Probably zoom out. I think they can't see the numbers on the bottom.
Oh, zoom out. Okay, perfect. There we go.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon. Sorry, good evening, everyone. My apologies for not being on camera. So we are currently nearing the end of the biennium. Total unobligated of 54,000. The council has spent down quite a few dollars up until this point, with plans to continue spending. We lose the dollars on June 30th. Linda did mention that we still have quite a few outstanding per diems. So again, asking you all to respond to Linda's missing request and get those per diems in so that we can have those dollars reflected in the correct fiscal year. Other than that, all of our negative numbers have been cleared up. I have no concerns. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Not necessarily for you, but I am just curious, maybe from the SEMA team, where are we at as far as unobligated? Because I know we're now looking at a month away, and I see that we still have 53,000.
Yes, Ash, do you want to answer that, or I can?
Oh, I will gladly answer that. Give me 1 second to pop back on here. Okay, excellent. So you should see me in a little bit. We do plan to set aside $60,000 from our current budget into the Odyssey Fund, which is a fund that was created by the IT department within the state of Minnesota. And it allows us to carry money from one fiscal year to another, even if, like, regardless of whether or not we're in a biennium, to be able to work on technological projects within the office that'll last an extended period of time. So 20,000 of those dollars are going to be for updating the website. While I am deeply passionate about this topic, I would like to be able to work with an expert. And then $40,000 of that is going to be going towards the repository fund that we as a council discussed many years back. And so that's the creation and upkeep, and that includes contracting with the state of Minnesota IT team. We also know that we're going to be spending some funds on the Juneteenth celebration. We know that over Juneteenth weekend, we'll be doing a ton of community engagement. So that might include some sponsorships of local organizations that are putting on events, and of course, reimbursements for travel and things like that. We also know that we're still continually ordering office supplies, and then we also have our typical monthly expenses. So while we do have a little less than 60 days, this money will be nearly gone by June 30th.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Perfect.
Any other questions? Alrighty.
All right.
Uh,
Thank you. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead now. Go ahead,
So,
Drew.
Chair, I have a question. I was on mute. So, for the IT stuff, is it the Protec serve outside vendor? Is it the $60,000 Ash?
The IT team makes that decision as to whether or not they have to bring in external vendors, but it's initially within the state. So the state will be managing the projects, but my guess is they might do some subcontracting. So we haven't gotten that far, but our contact is Minute.
Yeah, actually, it's not even whether it's outside the state, but I just, for the 60, is it because I've seen around $64,000 encumbered, if that what she was referring to, or if it's different, is it part of the $53,000 that unobligated?
So that money has not yet been encumbered, but it will be the unobligated funds. And then we're also seeing that based on the current budget that we set at the beginning of fiscal year 2023, that there might be some extra funds, because over the course of the year, we know that we've saved a little bit of money on staffing, programs were shifted around, so we will have $60,000 in our budget to set aside for this fund. And you should see that, you'll see that reflected definitely before the end of the fiscal year, ideally by the June full council meeting.
Yeah, and Ash and I are working on this budget and monitoring it very closely. As a matter of fact, we've been having a couple meetings a week so that we can make sure that, one, the funds are spent fiscally responsibly, and two, that we are accomplishing the objectives. So as Ash mentioned, that repository where we would be able to have people send us items of note, Black business directory, all of those kinds of things we're going to be looking at. And so at some point we will be connecting with you to see what your ideas are as to what that should exactly look like.
No, that's good to hear. Any other questions? And just as a reminder, I always like to bring this up, the way that our agency is designed is it's not necessarily programmatic driven, and I think that that's, something to really kind of, advertise and let people know from an informational perspective, is that's why you're seeing majority of our dollars coming from, salary, but we also do good work, to the community. And so as we're looking at the budget and you see, large amounts coming from the salary, and that's partly because we're not a heavy programmatic agency like some other agencies are. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions before we move on? All right. Awesome. I see we have Susan Brower is on the line. I'm so excited to have you present to us. Susan Brower is our state demographer. And so she will present some demographics for us. And Susan, you have about 40 minutes, so like about 6:55, which is probably plenty of time, or not, depending upon the questions that we get. But there's also wiggle room, so don't feel rushed. But I want to turn it over to you, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Good to be here, everyone. I thought that I had 20 to 30 minutes, so there will be plenty of time for discussion if you all.
Perfect.
I will. I'm already a slow talker, so I think we'll just see where this goes. So I just wanted to share with you some of the most recent data that we have about Black or African American Minnesotans. And I'm just pulling up my slide here. There we go. Okay, are you able to see them? I'll go to the beginning here. Okay, so for those of you that don't know our office or don't know me, we're a small office in the Department of Administration. There are 3 demographers and 1 kind of program person that helps navigate a lot of the ins and outs of state government and scheduling and that kind of thing. But in general, we're making population estimates for the population for funding formulas. We're making projections of the future to help people plan. And then we do a lot of special analyses and presentations like you'll see here today. I wanted to just give you kind of the most recent numbers that we have on what's been happening with Black or African American Minnesotans in the state. And okay, oh, there we go. Are you seeing a circle graph? Okay, good. The most recent numbers that we have for the Black or African American population in the state of Minnesota depends on how you define it. So if you use the most inclusive definition, it's just over 500,000, 505,000, which is close to 9% of the state's population. Now that includes people if they checked off on their census form or survey form that they were Black or African American alone, and it also includes people who checked off that they were Black in addition to another race like white, like Asian. It includes everyone, whether or not they said they were Hispanic or Latino, anyone that checked the box on that census form that said Black or African American was included in this estimate. So that gives you an estimate why, or an idea why our 2 estimates are 100,000 people difference. The more commonly used estimate of the Black population in Minnesota is around 400,000, almost 410,000 as of 2021, or 7% of the population. And that's the group that checked off Black alone. Black is my only race and I am non-Hispanic. So I just wanted to give you that full range of numbers so you kind of understand what we're looking at and what people might be referring to. This includes US-born African Americans, including newer African immigrant populations. That 505,000 is probably the most inclusive estimate that we have. So I want to turn to some of the recent socioeconomic trends for the Black or African American population in the state. And it's going to be a lot of numbers and a lot of graphs. I'll just kind of walk you through the trends. And I'm displaying them across a range of different racial groups because I want to have you have a sense of comparison across these different race groups. We're looking at changes over time from 2010 to 2021. And you can see the changes in unemployment over time for all the different racial and ethnic groups in the state of Minnesota. There is a bar missing for 2020 because that's when the data collection was so disrupted by the pandemic that we didn't get data for that year. But generally, you get the sense that there have been declines in unemployment over time as the economy has continued to improve and add jobs, that those improvements to people's lives in terms of more employment have really affected all racial groups up until 2021. And what we're seeing in that data point is still much of the impact of the pandemic. I would expect that when we do receive 2022 data later this year, that we will see a drop off in unemployment in many of these groups. But the trend has mostly been a decline over time in unemployment and then kind of a reversal of that trend during the pandemic. So while there have been improvements for many populations of color or BIPOC populations, including Black or African American, you can see that there are still very large differences with respect to employment outcomes for people of color compared to white non-Hispanic residents of the state. So if we look at labor force participation, we see kind of the same thing, but in reverse. So we see more labor force participation. The growth is not quite as steep. This is that we're looking here at male labor force participation. And it's considerably lower for Black or African American men compared to other groups, except for American Indian. But you can see that there has been an increase over that decade in the share of African American or Black men who are participating in the workforce, again, with that kind of stagnation in 2021 when the pandemic happened. We see even a kind of a steeper growth of female labor force participation as compared to male that we were just looking at. For Black or African American women, it grew as high as 80% up through right before the pandemic. And again, we saw that drop off after the pandemic. Just knowing, as I said, what I know about what the job market has been like and what the economy has been like, that we would expect to see that return to a continued growth in labor force participation for groups once we get those 2022 numbers. And then if we look at the types of work that Black men in Minnesota and Black women in Minnesota, the types of jobs that they are holding, you can see growth in full-time year-round work and growth for both groups. And you can see also growth in part-time work for both groups. Again, for full-time year-round work for men and women, that growth kind of stagnated in 2021 as it did for many other groups, the impact of the pandemic. So I share these numbers with you, especially kind of in the context of other racial groups to say that the disparities certainly still exist. You know about them well, but I want you to understand that what we have seen over the last 10 years at least has been that these trends have been moving in the right direction. Now, this doesn't say anything about the types of jobs. I mean, we have a little bit about the types of job. We have more full-time year-round workers, so that's going to be increased salaries, increased wages, but we still have, you know, the mix of jobs is certainly lower wage, lower skill work among Black or African American men and women in Minnesota, as you all are aware of, but I share it with you here just to kind of give you a status update of what has happened over the last 10 years, because I think we don't always hear about these numbers as kind of the top level story. So the numbers I was just sharing with you was that kind of most restricted definition of Black or African American. I want you to know that census data will be released coming up in September that will have more detailed race information for Black or African Americans in the US than we've really ever had. And that's because in the 2020 census, for the first time, under the category of Black or African American, as you see here, there was the option to fill in a specific origin or nationality or an additional kind of bit of information about the Black or African American detailed race, as we call it. Those numbers have not yet been released. I know they were taken in 2020, but the Census Bureau still hasn't released the numbers. They're expected in September 2023. And I'm excited to see what comes out of those numbers, because we've never had a full count. And we, of course, have such a diverse Black population in Minnesota that I think it's long overdue for a full count. What's really, I think, going to be exciting is that we will have detailed information about the place, the cities, the townships, the counties, where these groups live. We have a general sense, mostly concentrated in the Twin Cities metropolitan area, but we'll have a much more detailed accounting of where different groups within Minnesota cities and counties are living at that time in September. So that is coming. In the meantime, until we have more detailed information later this year, we've done a series of reports, and I just wanted you to be aware of those reports. They're called the Economic Status of Minnesotans. We recently released the third in this series in March of 2023, and the data are from 2016 to 2020. We drill down and disaggregate to the extent that we think it's a good idea to do so, meaning that the sample doesn't get so small that the numbers aren't really reflecting the true reality. So in our estimation and looking at the sample sizes, we've disaggregated Black or African American using the information that we have about ancestry, language, and birthplace. Not only the person and the individual, but also the other people living in the household. And with that information from the American Community Survey, we're able to disaggregate these data into US-born African American, Ethiopian, Liberian, Somali, and other Black, which is exclusively foreign-born Black Minnesotans in that last group. About half of all Black or African Americans fall into that African American group, just kind of for your sense of scale here. You can read more about kind of the sizes of those different groups. But the purpose of this report is to put in front of people like the council, like you on the council, a range of different economic circumstances specific to these cultural groups. So we looked, for example, not only at labor force participation, but we're looking at wages, we're looking at access to vehicles in the households, just a whole kind of range of indicators. And that's available on our website that you can see there. I'll just give you a couple of examples of the data that are in there and then open it up for your questions to me. If there are any, I'm happy to take them. This is showing you the home ownership rate of those 4 groups that I shared with you. Liberian isn't shown here because the sample size gets too small when we're looking at the household level. So that's why there's an asterisk there without the data. But you can see here that 25% of African-American, US-born African-Americans are homeowners, compared with 75% of the households that are renters. For Somali Minnesotans, that's 11% are homeowners, Ethiopian 30%, and other Black, which is about 40%. And again, that other Black category under this definition is foreign-born households led by foreign-born Black residents. Another indicator that we look at in this workbook is the share of households with children. And what you can see here is, a higher proportion of children in all groups, all cultural groups within Black or African American larger race group have a larger share of children. On average, these groups are also younger than the average Minnesotan as well. And so it makes sense that we would have younger families. That's what we see here. I was asked to speak a little bit to the governor's budget, and I must say that I can't exactly map on which initiatives will impact which dimensions of these data, but certainly there was a lot of tax credits proposed. And you all will be more familiar with the budgets that may be specific to these data, but I just bring this to you to show you that those policy initiatives specific to households with families, like the tax credit, like the child care tax credit as well, hopefully will provide some support there for these families. And with that, I am going to stop sharing so I can see all of you again. And is there anything that I'm happy to answer any question you might have about the data I shared or the census or any question you may have.
Well, I know Jude has a question. I'm gonna just comment really quickly. I popped it in the chat. So when you talked about the ability to put in, your various ethnic, I think that's great. I think what will come out of that though, is I'm hoping that we will see a little bit more accuracy in numbers, which we know is always hard to really depict our African immigrant population. And so I'm wondering if that, if the hope would be that we're going to see that differentiation of, how many do we have that are actually African-American, and then how many do we have that are of, other ethnicities. So I'm really excited about that. So thank you for that piece. Jude, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. The question I have is for the Liberian community. I don't know why the data was too small, but they will have a lot of Liberians in Minnesota. Yeah. And even if you don't have the answer, or even if you have the answer, I would like us to have further conversation on this, on how to connect with the community, especially when it comes to census. It's very, very critical. So that's number one question I have. And the second question I have is, we know that Blacks are undercounted nationwide. And with the estimate or with what we have with census, is there anything the state is doing to compensate for the undercounting? Because a lot go into population. So that is the second question. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. There are a lot of Liberians in Minnesota. The issue is really the sample size. So while it's the American Community Survey is collected by the Census Bureau on an ongoing basis nationwide. But when we start looking specifically at specific cultural groups, and we are also looking just at a household instead of every person who might live in that household, our sample size gets smaller and smaller and smaller, so that we don't have the data that we would love to be able to show how different groups, in addition to Liberian, the groups that you don't even see listed there, you know, the sample size just breaks down and is not sufficient to be able to do that. We have been working with the Census Bureau for the last year, telling them, and with our congressional offices, with each of our congressional offices, we've asked for a larger sample size to be able to show more data coming out of that survey, because that's really the one that we all go to understand how Minnesotans are faring. So my hope is that we will have a better sense once we get that full count decennial data. One of the problems with using the American Community Survey to identify different groups is a lot of people don't answer some of the questions. One of the questions that's asked, for example, is ancestry. And a lot of people skip that question. Either it's not a meaningful concept, or, you know, it's not if people have limited English language proficiency, they may not know that word ancestry when they're filling out the form. And so the data are absolutely not perfect, but we've done what we can do with them. Is kind of we wanted to be able to put out what we could put out. In terms of the undercount in the 2020 census, you're right. The undercount was about 3%, an estimated 3% for Black or African American Americans nationwide. That's about the undercount. And you know, our effort here in Minnesota was really to work with groups just as much as we could during the census to hopefully reduce that 3% here in Minnesota. And there was a lot of effort here. We don't have an actual estimate from the 2020 census by race at the state level, but we do know that the undercount in Minnesota was among the lowest in the nation. And so my hope is that means that populations of color, including Black or African American Minnesotans, were better represented here than they were elsewhere. But we just don't have the data to be able to say that for sure.
Thank you.
After hearing, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've got like a two-part question. The first part is, I just wanted to know, is there like a focus on ethnicity versus nationality? Because from what I can see, I guess most of the groups were either nationalities or ethnicities. So if you look at it, an African American would be considered an ethnic group, a distinct ethnic group. A Somali is a distinct ethnic group that kind of doubles as a nationality. But then Ethiopian is exclusively a nationality made up of multiple ethnic groups. And so is there a focus on nationality or ethnicity in that process? And then again, this kind of links to that question with like Somali people. I constantly see that the numbers get undercounted due to several factors, mainly secondary migration. So like a Somali person living in Ohio just upping and moving in July to Minnesota or things of that nature. And then the other aspect is ethnic Somalis happen to live across multitude of nations due to colonial borders. So what you'll see is there's a third of the land in Ethiopia is inhabited by ethnic Somalis. Similarly, in Kenya, they're a majority ethnic group. In Djibouti. So how do you mitigate those factors? So if I have an Ethiopian passport, or like, for example, my mother has an Ethiopian birthplace, but exclusively identifies as Somali, like how does that go into the process?
So Are you asking about how the census is collecting the data or about how we're analyzing it once we get it, or both?
Mainly how Minnesota's doing it, because my expectation of the census is not to be that nuanced on something like this. I don't think that there's like a ultra focus, like where there's not that many Somali people in America, comparatively speaking to other groups. But I guess in the state of Minnesota, just so we're like, I guess, informed as a state. Mhm.
Yeah. So I would say that there is, as the state of Minnesota broadly, where those discussions are at are how can we best capture the cultural communities, the ethnic communities, the racial communities that we have? And it hasn't advanced to the point where even that the discussion that you bring up of kind of favoring ethnicity over national origin over the question is, we're all kind of doing it differently across different agencies at this point. And so I think right now, especially as the federal government is reconsidering its standards about how to collect race nationally at the federal level, that's something that I'm just now hearing different departments across the state of Minnesota trying to figure out how do we do this together and in a thoughtful and a coordinated way. As far as our report, we really take any detail that we possibly can grab onto from the data. So whether it comes from the language data, which includes Oromo, whether it is from ancestry or less so birthplace, but ancestry, we grab onto whatever it is that is reported in the data and categorize those people that way. And if there are multiple cultural groups or multiple ethnicities, we may miss that in ours, and they may be included in other when they otherwise should be really in a mixed group. Did that answer your questions? I would say the federal government really is trying to capture how people see themselves and what identity is important to them, regardless of whether it's national origin or ethnicity or whatever. And so I feel like that's where the Census Bureau is, that's where Office of Management and Budget is. They're just trying to figure out how to collect that, I think.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate that answer.
Any other questions for Susan? Well, again, Susan, however we can be helpful as well as a council, as you're collecting the data and then you're thinking about, how do you disseminate this data? That's where, we can kind of, come into play to say, does this get put into our newsletter? Do we encourage people to make sure that they're filling out the census so that they can be accounted for, so that we're making sure the numbers are a little bit more accurate? Those would be some of the things I could see how we can work in concert with, your office to help with those pieces as well. Slides, they're asking, will those be available? If you're willing to share the slides, I think if we get them sent to either Ash or Linda, and then we can make sure that we can send them out as well. And then what other question was, is there a full report on your website?
Yes, if you, yes and yes, I will send them to, I will send them right now. And then on our website, you can't miss it. It's in the big scroller, that image, the economic status of Minnesotans. And our website again is mn.gov //demography.
I just linked the report in the chat for everyone if they want to
Oh,
click on it.
perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Flakami.
Yep.
Yolanda, I see you're typing. You want to just go ahead and unmute and ask? Might be easier.
Pardon me?
I said, I see you were typing. I said, I don't know if it's easier for you to unmute and just, if you had a question or comment.
I was just asking for Ash to please share the slides with us.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yep, we'll absolutely make sure that we do that. Joseph, just so that we make sure that you get it, maybe Joseph, pop in your email in the chat so that we can make sure that we get it to you, because I believe you might be our only community member on here, but we do want to make sure that we get that information to you. Go ahead, Linda.
Thank you, Susan, for presenting. Have you presented this to community? Because I know that they would be interested in hearing this type of information, and they probably would also have some suggestions as to how best reach their communities.
So I was set to present again to the Mind, Body, Soul group. I don't, would you consider that a community facing group? And that one was rescheduled, so that's TBD up here. And yeah, we're always looking for ways to talk to different groups and want to make sure that we are making this available and receiving feedback on what we've done too. So that it's a full circle of information, hopefully, as we're creating these reports. So please do just you know, my email is was on the screen. It will be in the slides. I can put it in the chat.
We can track you down.
All right.
Please, before Susan, before you go, just quick suggestion on this slide. So the bars, because there's so many colors, and some of us are not very good with color differentiation. If that particular set of slide, if we can have the beginning of the year, like 2020, and then the end of the year, 2021, so people will see how it flows, because sometimes the color can be, you know, of 10 different colors. It can sometimes be similar.
Believe me, I struggled with how to present that, but thank you. I'll keep working at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we let Susan go? I'm not seeing any hands. Well, Susan, again, thank you so much. And however we can help, you know, be a really concerted partner with you, that would be awesome. And how we can help, you know, specifically when we start talking about filling out the census and other aspects that, you know, kind of come with that as well. We would love to partner with you on that.
Likewise. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we're going to move on to public comments. I believe we only have one community member. Any public comment from our community member?
Good day, good evening. The only thing I want to say is, Linda, thanks for sending me the link. The reason, that's why I stopped by your office yesterday. I was up at the Capitol for something else, and I walked by. I thought, oh, let me see if Linda's in so I can get the link. And unfortunately, you weren't available, so I had to give the coffee cake and coffee to the nice guys out front.
What?
So maybe the next time I'm just carrying some food for no reason, I'll stop by.
Like I said, give me a heads up next time. And thanks to Ash for helping facilitate that as well. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Joseph. So we're going to move on to unfinished business. And really, I'm going to kind of dovetail, if you will, into unfinished and new business. So we've had this on our agenda, and it's kind of just rolled over from, you know, each, let's say each semester. Hello, I'm in my own, my work mode. each month we've had this roll over. And so I just wanted to kind of give a further context in reference to how do we engage the governor's office and community, and just really, we're looking at pulling together a group, and this is why I'm kind of dovetailing it into our new business of communication strategy work group, because I think we need to think about how do we engage with community, what's being said to community, how do we present ourselves, you know, if we're out there in the community and either we're representing ourselves individually or we're representing the council, then what does that look like? And then what potentially could be our communication strategy around that, and just being cognizant of anything that we may say that could be detrimental or could be misconstrued. So I think that's one of the things that we have to kind of think about as far as how do we engage with the governor's office and community. And so just wanted to kind of have a mini discussion around one, trying to get a small work group together. And even if we have to split in several work groups, because we know if we have too many of us, then we're considered, having a quorum. So we would like to try to keep it no more than like 2 to 3 from the council members. And then I think it would be advantageous for us to invite community to serve on this as well, to even inform us to say, here's what would be helpful as you're talking about various communication pieces. When do we speak up? When don't we speak up? I know we had a very robust discussion at the executive council meeting last week. And I don't want to get into, the specifics, but the premise of that discussion was really, there have been some environmental things that have happened within throughout the nation, I'll say it that way. And I think we've always struggled with, when do we make a statement? When don't we make a statement? When do we dovetail and do this in partnership with somebody else that may be leading? So it's almost one of those, and I kind of think of my other hat that I wear at ALF is, when is it something that we need to champion? When is it something that we have to kind of help convene? And when is it something that we need to think about collaborating? And so I would love to kind of quickly get, a pulse on, one, are there 3 people right now that have an interest in, kind of serving on that communication strategy work group? And then also just kind of leaving it open, kind of having a quick, we have time, so it's about 10 minutes to 7. If we could have maybe about a 20-minute discussion of what potentially could this look like. And then I'll move on to our next piece on the agenda. So I don't know if anybody wants to kind of start us off on your thoughts, your initial thoughts.
I can jump in and just say hello, everyone. Congratulations, Chair Hughes.
Thank you.
And more to come on that. But I definitely would be interested in being a part of that committee, that work group. I think that, as a public servant, it's always a challenge to hold all of the hats that you wear when you make public comments. And you just always have to be cognizant of how what you say may impact the organizations and the entities that you represent. And so certainly, having some framework to be able to think through that, and not that we want to silence or muzzle or restrict anyone's beliefs. But I do think that, as public servants, we always have to be aware of how, the things that we comment on, the messages that we send to the community impacts the very community that we represent.
No, thank you for that, Andre. And I got you down. I wrote your name down.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions in reference to that? And even feel free to type it in the chat if you, are interested in joining that work group. And I believe this work group will be led by Flockamy, correct, Linda?
Yes, depending
Okay.
upon her workload.
Okay. So Flockamy, even I'm gonna put you on the spot. I don't know if there's things that you've been thinking about too that you may want to take this time and space to kind of share out. That'd be awesome too.
Yeah, I think what would be helpful is determining, there's a couple things that we discussed. One was making sure that we had some sort of protocol in terms of communications when we were going to communicate, what form of communications we were going to use for when, for certain events that happened in our community, and the impact that had in the community. And then also, I think there's kind of a conversation as well around making sure that I think there's a secondary thing of like code of like conduct or productivity with board members. Um, so those would be the things that we would be communicating as well. And then just kind of thinking about what it looks like when we are sharing communications for things to be on behalf of the council or behalf of our individual as a person. So typically, right now, a lot of our communications that we have are through our bulletin. And then when we do write letters, they're policy letters that Theo writes. And then if we do have a statement, we do have someone externally that we contract out. And then that's approved by Linda and then Narita and then or Chair Hughes. And then from there, we decide, sometimes things our Chair Hughes may decide to write something on behalf of the council, and then we as a staff may put something out depending on just what is, what's more appropriate. So that's what we have right now, but we're trying to determine a little bit more details for those. So basically situational things that have come up. So that's where we are right now, but I think it will be good to have some folks on there, get your opinions.
No, thank you. Abhidraman, I saw that you put your hand up and then you took it down. So I didn't know if you wanted to say something.
That was an accident. My apologies.
No, that's okay.
All right, I was trying to click the chat button. I don't know how I got to there.
That's all right. The other thing I'll add, and Flockaby, you just reminded me of this, which is when certain statements are made, the beauty about the chair's role is if we know that there could be potential, and I'll just say it like this, backlash to the direct counsel, that's typically where I will step in and say, hey, I'll take the heat. And my language that I may use and the tonation of the letter, I probably can be a little bit more verbose versus, Linda as executive director. And so just thinking about that whoever wants to serve, that's where we may change, when do we respond? How do we respond? And then the tonation, if you will, of the letter is something to also think about in that same vein. But I just want to kind of throw that out there. So whoever does decide to serve, besides Andre, Councilmember Dukes, then I think that is something to think about. How do we do that? And Yolanda, absolutely. I like that, what you put into the chat is, triage the information, to basically everybody, because I mean, that's really what it's about. How do we triage that? And when do we triage it? And then when do we not feel like we have to excuse ourselves or apologize for being authentic and unapologetically, and I'll say Black. You all know I talk Black holistic. So, I mean, I would say that as well. Jude said he would love to join. So we're going to add Jude to that conversation. And then Andre, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Hughes. Just one more comment. I think it would be helpful for us to have a protocol around if our views don't align with what is being communicated by the council, what is the process for that? How do we handle that, right?
Yeah. No, that's good. And I think that could be something that's a part of our code of conduct. We do have, and everybody signed it, right? So when you came on, you had to sign for the Secretary of State to say, yep, this is what, oh, good. Yolanda, whoop, we got our 3. There we go. Yolanda also.
I was going to ask, but I didn't want to.
But we did sign off on something that really kind of says, hey, I am willing to act in such and such a manner. And so I think that could be your starting point of how do we go back to what everybody signed on once they got the call that they were going to be appointed. Then they have you sign off and then send that, documentation back. So that may be the starting point to say what is stated in here that we can lift up and even put our own code of conduct, and that can be added into the bylaws. I mean, the beauty about the bylaws is it's our bylaws. It's not something that has to be necessarily driven from the state perspective. That's where we get to say, this is how we want to operate, and this is the context of how we'll do that. So I appreciate that. Any other comments or questions in reference to this. Thank you for those that volunteered. Andre, did you have another question or you just forgot to lower your hand? Okay.
Sorry, I always have.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So I'm going to move on to the other piece is if you have not heard already, my announcement is I will be resigning as of June 30th. And the reason being is because I have accepted a new position out of state. And so I actually will be moving. And my last day in Minnesota is July 6th. And so it's kind of perfect timing because this is also the year that we would want to do elections for the chair and the treasurer. So this opens up for, somebody to come in, new innovative ideas, to continue to lead the work that we've already started. I know since I've been chair, we've done some great things where we've invited other people from other agencies to kind of share what they're doing, and then how we've been able to align and kind of go forward, if you will, around, state issues for African heritage. I will share what it is because some people may not know. So I was named the 6th college president for Bay College in Michigan. So I'm at my job right now, still trying to play cleanup and, do the transitioning. But I wanted to kind of put the announcement in, and also for those that may have an interest in sharing, now's the time to kind of think about taking on that next realm. It is, like I said, yes, a happy cry, yes. But it's been, it has been great. Those that know me, and Andre and I go back, way back. Red light, green light, child.
And be more proud of my
Right.
sister.
Thank you. Thank you. So it is a bittersweet because I've lived in Minnesota all my life. And so this is a different, it's a transition, but it's a good transition. I've enjoyed my time with the council and other governing boards that I've sat on, and just other organizations that I've been a part of, but we're moving in the right direction. I'm really excited for where the council is going. And just, again, looking at some of the new innovative things that we're doing, like to have Susan share, the pieces that we've always talked about that we're not being, our numbers are inaccurate. Our numbers are not showing, the accuracy. I think this opens up, for great timing, for this to kind of happen. Questions, comments, concerns?
Wow. Our family, we're a broken family. I ain't funny. It's not funny. It hurts.
I know. It will be different.
In a good way. We're proud and we're happy for you, but
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
So
let's just acknowledge, let me just say this.
Okay.
Let's acknowledge that there are not many African American women leading higher educational institutions in this country. So not only is this great, but it is also historic. And so we just celebrate the historic moment that you are, providing to our community across this nation. So we honor you and celebrate you and salute you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Amen.
And I'm pretty sure I am their first African American president, because it is the Upper Peninsula. So I'm pretty sure I'm their first. But it'll be good. It's a good way from a challenging perspective to spend time at an institution to help diversify it, and literally this time I do mean ethnic diversity. And I think the timing is now. The more that we can bring people into the fold, I think that's awesome. So thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. So
stay tuned.
Oh, what'd you say?
For a celebration. There will be one coming.
Okay.
Because of course we can't just sit here and, like Councilmember Dukes was saying, we are so very proud of you. It will be a huge loss to our board, but man, the world is getting, a dynamo. I'm just so thrilled as to the potential and where you're going to go. So I'm excited. Now
Thank
don't get me to
you.
shouting because I'm a church girl. Come on now.
Thank you all. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. I think the last bit, we're really early today. That's awesome. I love it. I'm going to turn it over to staff reports, and you all have the rest of the meeting until we come back with our announcements. So I'm going to turn it over to the team.
I could go first. We are continuing to work on, actually, I'll just start with Juneteenth. We're doing some planning for that right now, for some internal events that we'll be doing with, hopefully Senator Champ, or I don't want to say anything since it's live. But we'll be doing some internal event things, but also we will be doing some work around the state, or around the around the state. So if there are any particular Juneteenth events around your area that you have gone to in the past, or you're planning on going to, or know that is occurring, I would just request that you please share that with me. That would be good as we're compiling the list for ourselves, but also for the bulletin, and then for potential partners and things like that. But the goal is to definitely make sure that we are attending a few key Juneteenth events, and just giving some more information about CMAH, and supporting communities as much as we possibly can. If you are able to attend by tabling at some of those events, that would be really helpful as well, just because our staff is not as many as the Juneteenth events that we have. So it would be very helpful for that, even if it's like an hour or something, that would be very helpful. As you're preparing for that event, just feel free to let us know. I do anticipate that there'll be a lot more activity, just as COVID winds down officially with the government. So just keep that in mind. I'm also continuing to look at events in all over the Minnesota. So if there are other events that that are happening besides Juneteenth that you would like to get on our radar, please feel free to let me know, either in this chat or via email. That would be helpful for me, just so that we can keep track of those things. And yeah, that would be helpful. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. I am continuing to work with Wintana around our strategy and planning for community engagement. She and I have been meeting a little bit, and then we are continuing to work on some of the work around our issue groups. So that will be our next, that is my next priority, as well as planning some planning around some of the events that we will be attending, and listening sessions as well. So we are planning to do that in person. We had a couple virtual sessions last year, so we'll continue to do the virtual option, but we would like to take advantage of this to go to other areas outside of the Twin Cities, and just meet with the African heritage community. So that is currently what I'm working on, as well as just hearing from other agencies. I know we talked a little bit too about kind of like the COVID wind down and what that looks like for our communities. So I'm still trying to get some more information around that, just because we know that communities are still impacted by that, and just kind of what we saw previously. Yeah, so that is, I will continue to get some information on that, and I'm curious to see how that will impact some of the things that we've been seeing in our communities. But that is the update that I have for now. I'll take any questions too if anybody has any.
So Flockme, what's the easiest way to get you? I mean, should we I'm just thinking that you may get flooded with emails.
That's fine. I get flooded with emails.
Okay, I was gonna say, so it's fine just for the council members just to
Email, yeah.
email you
Feel
directly.
free to email
Okay,
me. Yeah, that would probably be the easiest. If you want to call me or text me, that would be great. I prefer
Okay.
text, but if you call me and leave a voicemail, I'll read the voicemail.
yeah, so maybe, I don't know if,
Call me.
maybe throw your
Send
number.
an email.
Yeah,
Send
send
an
an
email or call
email with
me, either
your,
one, yeah. But I think that would probably be the easiest way. And then if you
Okay.
want to have a phone call, we'll probably do that just to give you logistics of what is expected and things like that. But the goal is to make sure that we have a presence, not only to show people that we're there, but to answer questions as you know, people may have questions about policy, this I was going to say school year, but session ending, other agencies and things like that. So resources that we may have available to them. So we just want to make sure that they know that we're available as a resource to them, and that we are there to inform them of what's going on within government, but also get their feedback too of what's happening, because it'll be really helpful, especially as we wind up for the listening sessions. So.
perfect.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Flockamy? All right, I think we're on to, is it Theo? You are up.
Hey, good evening, everyone. All right, for the policy side, we're in the final stretch of the 2023 session. I think the DFL House leaders have said that they want to conclude the session by the end of next week. So we're really in the final stretch. The House and the Senate are doing final negotiations on the budget bills, which are the top priority in terms of getting things done over the next 2 weeks. Those will be the main priority, because those have to get passed before the session concludes. In terms of the major budget legislation that we've been tracking, the conference committees have concluded their work on the higher education budget bill and the housing budget bill. Those are two areas that we were following that are really that have final agreements. And the housing bill contained, and we have details about this in our bulletin, and we can always provide more information to you guys if you want it. But the housing bill contains funding for down payment assistance to really address racial disparities in homeownership, affordable housing development. There's some major funding there. Homeless prevention is another area, and there's some policy reforms that that community has been advocating for a while in terms of rental rights protections, etc., like tenant rights and such. I believe the bill comes close to $1 billion for the housing. The higher education bill, a key highlight there, and that's led by one of our council members, Senator Fateh. So really a landmark piece of legislation that he pushed through here in Minnesota. Contains tuition-free program, contains a lot of other increased support for student support services, to really increase college recruitment and retention for underrepresented students. Really important provisions for underrepresented students, for BIPOC students, etc., low-income students. Other areas, just in terms of highlights from April, we submitted letters in support of the paid family and medical leave bill. Our speaker today referenced the child tax credits and property tax credits. I don't know if she mentioned property tax credit, but in any case, in our own engagement with the tax omnibus, certainly those two areas have been important in terms of our own push in that bill provision for targeted tax credits, tax cuts that really will provide relief to underserved individuals and households, and really that'll be beneficial to children and families. So we have letters on that. We have letters on the paid family leave. In Health and Human Services, we have letters, really supporting investments in caring workforce development, an issue that we have been following and advocating for a while. There's increased support for that in the human services budget. Culturally relevant services, organizations such as the African American Child Wellness Institute, pushing, advocating for support for, important programs in the community. Another key provision there is personal care assistance pay increase. The Chair Noor in the House in particular, and also Chair Huffman in the Senate, you really have some important provisions there in terms of increasing pay for PCAs and care workers, the frontline workers. Another area that we join community support, community partners in supporting is the push for immigrant inclusion in eligibility for Minnesota Care. So to have undocumented immigrants, our fellow neighbors, residents here in Minnesota, also be qualified to have access to that program. In public safety, we've been in partnership with the coalition, the Justice for All Coalition, and we submitted letters and I think some of these letters are up on the website now, in support of civil rights and community safety proposals that some of them have been proposals that certainly we've been supporting for a number of years now, and hopefully we see them cross the finish line this session. And then finally, another key area of work in April was some engagement with the Office of Management, the U.S. Office of Management and Budget. That was also referenced by our speaker. Some of the updates that have been going on in terms of federal race and ethnicity statistical standards. There's proposals to update the directive, the regulatory guidelines around the collection of race and ethnicity data from 1997. And when the federal working group that is doing that work, when they released their initial proposals, they requested public comment. And so we had that in our bulletin to invite community members to provide comments, and we also engaged that process and submitted comments as well. And that, I think, is also up on the website as well. So those are some of the highlights in the policy side, and I will take questions.
I was just typing, but I'll unmute. Theo, do you know, and I know Representative Hudson is on here too, do you know if there's been talk about a special session this round or not necessarily?
I have not. And I would defer certainly to Representative Hudson on this, but I have not heard of a special session.
Okay.
My sense is that the push is to get the major items done by next week.
Okay. Representative Hudson, if you're still on, do you know if that's been any discussions, or is it kind of confirmed with what Theo stated?
Ironically, I would say Theo's probably in a better position to know that than I am.
Okay.
Because as a member of the minority, I am the last person they're going to tell as to what their plans are. But the scuttlebutt certainly is that we expect things to get wrapped up and for there to be no need in the majority's mind for a special session.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Any questions for Theo? All right, thank you, Theo. We are moving on to Ash. You are up.
Okay, thank you so much for your patience. The bandwidth to get all this virtually to our audience, to our constituents takes up a lot. So thanks for your patience. So first and foremost, my work over the past month has been focused on bookkeeping. I didn't know that I was interested in accounting, but lo and behold, I'm gaining the skills, y'all. So excited. So I got to support Linda with creating the contracts for NECA Create, or executing the contracts for NECA Creative and Neon Consulting Services. So I'll be taking on the bulk of the like administrative finance work and the details. Moving on in the future, working on invoice tracking for the remainder of the fiscal year, and then improving the systems we have into next year, and overall just reconfiguring and like redesigning, refiguring out what this role looks like now that I'm in it in terms of accounting and bookkeeping. Also doing some website updates. We now have started to upload letters of support that Theo has written on a variety of policy initiatives that have been going on this session on our website. So when you type on, log on the internet, get on there, you'll be able to see those, and we'll continue to keep posting them. And then one word about councils and boards. That's part of what I keep updating in the weekly bulletin. I know that all of you, of course, have your specific industries and specialties. If you have any like issue areas that we should be highlighting for boards for people to join to be able to advocate on behalf of the council, on behalf of Minnesotans of African Heritage, please let me know. If you would like more information about other boards that you would like to join in addition to the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage, please let me know. I just want to make sure that we're continuing to uplift African Heritage people into these positions so that way they can also advocate and make a difference. And the last thing that I've got is an update on meeting structure. So per Chair Hughes's suggestion, either 1 to 2 full council meetings ago, I sent out a survey via SurveyMonkey to get an understanding of how people were feeling about in-person meetings versus virtual meetings. I asked 4 questions in this survey. We'll break that down in a second. There were 8 folks that answered out of 13 board members. I consider that a preliminary win, but I would love for the other 5 people to turn that in as soon as possible. So I'll send out yet again another reminder. I chose to keep the survey anonymous. That way folks could fully share what's going on, and I will not be using SurveyMonkey to track your IP addresses. So don't worry about that. So of the 8 people that responded to the first question, which meeting option do you prefer? 3 people out of the 8 said they wanted to meet in person for most of the year. 1 person said they wanted to meet fully virtual for most of the year. And 4 people mentioned that they wanted to meet hybrid depending on the circumstance. And I would say overall, what you may notice is that the hybrid option is going to be what the majority of folks who took the survey, again, we're still waiting on 5 more people, would like. So going a little bit further into that, I asked what meeting cadence works best for folks. We had 1 person say that they would like to meet in person from April to October and meet virtually from November to February. And the reason why November to February in that question is virtual is because we know that those are the months with inclement weather, namely snow makes it harder to drive. So the next 2 people within that 8 said that they wanted to plan to meet in person for every single council meeting with a virtual participant option if folks aren't able to attend. So of course, if you have a medical emergency, if you are extremely far away, whatever it is that would bar you from meeting in person, there would be a virtual option present for you. And then 5 of the 8 people said they wanted to plan to meet virtually for most of the year with 1 meeting each quarter. And quarter, we're going off of like a Gregorian calendar year, not the government's fiscal year. So that would allow us to still be able to meet in person, connect with one another, but not require us to be in person the entire time. The third question was, describe any circumstances that impacted your ability to meet in person. Most people felt as though the first 2 questions got the bulk of what they needed. And of course, folks provided other circumstances. Very thankful to folks for their honesty. And also, I know that I'm new to the board. I know that I'm new to the council. Y'all have been on the council longer than me. So if there was any information that you felt like you had to reiterate, thank you so much for doing that in the comments. And then lastly, I asked folks to provide further feedback, which I was really thankful to see that reflected. It seems to me that for the most part, folks are flexible, but the hybrid option, meeting quarterly in person, but virtually the rest of the months feels like the best option. That being said, though, there are 5 more people that still have to take this survey, so anything could change. I guess I'll turn to Chair Hughes and ask, when would you like to wrap up this conversation process about meeting structure?
Yeah, I would say, because we had already said that, you know, we know that probably June will be an in-person meeting because that will be my last meeting. I would say if we can have it wrapped up, if you all can respond, you know, no later than next Friday, or actually this Friday. I mean, today is what's today? The 9th?
Yes, it is the 9th of May.
I think the survey's been out for a long time. So I'm only going to give you a few days. I mean, the 5 of you know who you are. If you can respond, I would say by Friday the 12th. And then from that point, Ash, then, you know, as of Monday the 15th, go with the majority. And then at the executive council meeting in June, then we can kind of share the results. And then in July, you will have a new chair. And so then they can make that decision of what the results were and how do we move forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chair Hughes. I've written
You're
that
welcome.
down. Does anyone have any questions for me about the life I lead of the council?
This is Jude.
Excellent.
So I took the survey, and I just wanted to share some of what I was thinking. Before the pandemic, we had a in-house meeting, and we usually had like maybe 1 or 2 people who will call on phone. That's virtual. But I know that pandemic has changed a lot of how we relate and how we see things. But I will also encourage that being a Black community is always good for us to connect as much as we can. And I know that then people used to come, community members used to come to the meeting, and they're actually good networking that we do before or after the meeting. So I just don't want folks to be to lose the value of face-to-face and what it brings to the community. And also, since there will be virtual option always, I strongly encourage, regardless of what people are thinking, to really support in-person meeting. It's good for the community and it's good for us as well. But if there's any reason to meet virtually, there's always option for that, even before COVID. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Nutty.
And Tawana, to answer your question, as far as a hard close date for council members to submit their per diem, by the next council meeting, June 13th. And that's for all past due per diems. Because then that way you're going, and the reason why I'm saying that is because then you can go into as you all know, our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th, and we're going into the next fiscal year, which would be fiscal 24, kind of with a clean slate.
Collect your coins, my friends. You've earned them. Please collect. Please reach out and we'll figure it out for you.
Perfect.
All right.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Linda, you are up.
Okay, thank you. First off, I want to give hats off to Council Member Dukes on a fantastic event. The NAS Gala was exceptional. Everyone that I speak with, they just say it's the best gala that they've ever been to. So hats off to that. And thank you for the support. It's important for us, as you heard Councilmember Nadi say, for us to be in community. So when we're there, it's not to get a free meal. It's not about that. It's about being present, being visible, networking, engaging with community so that people know that we're here, listening. So all of those things are important. So thank you to those who did come out. And we had a good time and saw Diana Ross. I mean, that was the icing on the cake, right? But there was a purpose. So when we do these galas, there is a purpose for and reason why we do them. So mostly I have been, as you've heard already, partnering with the team. They've been doing a stellar job in their specific areas. So I've been partnering with Flockamy and Ash on Juneteenth, Theo on legislation and letters, Ash on budgeting. We spent a lot of time on budgeting, and as they said, they didn't know they had an interest in it, but they do. So spent a lot of time with that. The other thing is we did get the contracts executed for NECA and for Dion Consulting. So spending a little time with NECA, that's the group that has done our annual report, and we'll be doing our branding. So one of the things that they want to do is they're going to be working with Flock of Me to meet with community, but then they also want to meet with the board. So whoever is interested in meeting, it's going to be an informal meeting, Zoom meeting, and that's just to get some ideas and some thoughts, to get maybe a perspective on what your specific community is saying about CMA, just so that they can have complete information as they build out who we should be in terms of to the facing for the community. So if you would like to be a part of that, either let me know now, put it in the chat, or send me an email. Would love to get some council members involved in that. The other piece of that is with the next contract, the Dion contract, is that contract is about retreats and about refocusing on our purpose, looking again at our mission, our strategic plan. So we are planning to have a staff and board retreat on June 24th. So I'm giving it to you a whole month in advance. Put that on your calendar. June 24th. I know it's a Saturday. We will make sure that you're fed, and we will feed each other with our intellectual knowledge. How do you like that? But this will be an opportunity for us to come together, discuss, issues, discuss where we are with the current strategic plan, think about, okay, what are the goals for next year? So it will be a full day. And we might go somewhere for happy hour afterwards. We're still planning that out. But June 24th, you will get a notice and some information on that. As part of retreats and strategic planning, the staff will be having a couple half-day sessions separately from the board retreat. One will focus on team building. We're still a fairly new team. I mean, Ash has been here, 5 minutes? And they're doing a fantastic job. And Flock of Me has only been here a short while as well. And again, just the staff is doing the work. They're getting it done, and I can't be prouder. So we're going to have that. So I've been spending having conversations with Karen DeYoung to flesh that out. Been spending some time, and Theo's kind of been involved in this too, on the Office of New Americans in the legislation. What does that look like? Because there was still some confusion as to who they are versus who we are. And so just making sure that when the legislation is passed, it's clean. It's distinct. Everybody knows their roles, and everybody knows that we're all on board with each other. And that's a key thing. So if anybody asks you about ONA, Office of New Americans, we are on board. We're excited about the fact that there is going to be another group who's going to be working with immigrants and refugees. And so we'll be doing a lot of things collaboratively. I know that Flock of Me has already been meeting with the assistant commissioner as to some community engagement ideas, but we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. Keeping an eye on our appropriation. So far, so good. As you know, I put in a request for some additional funding so that we can have a couple people who can be focused in the African immigrant community, one more community relations and the other more policy. So far, so good. Both the Senate and the House are on the same page with it. So just keeping an eye on that. Again, Juneteenth. Spent some time working with Dr. Stephanie Barrage. She delivered an address at the Zeta Phi Beta sorority big convention, regional convention. So got a proclamation from the governor for her, and working to make sure that she had everything that she needed. There were over 1,200 Black women that came into our city. And so it was an important venture for us. Um, as Theo mentioned, we're partnering with that Justice for All coalition that Justin Terrell is driving. There's 15 public safety bills that are associated with that. Many are bills that we had been working on previously with him before this consortium was formed. And so we are excited to do that. We met with the governor and governor, lieutenant governor, had a conversation about public safety and some of the things that we need to see. And then continuing just the general meetings, the Minority Business Coalition on Racial Equity, Tiffany Daniels, the Violent Crime Commission. So what I'm finding out is that it's just so important to show up, to be a part of these committees, the Transportation Committee, because when you sit in those spaces, if there is no one of color in those spaces, our agenda isn't heard. Our voice isn't heard. And it's not necessarily that people don't want to hear it. It's just that it's not at the top of their mind, but it's at the top of our mind. And so we've got to show up and make sure that if we see something that's not right, we've got to call it out or make suggestions as to how can they get information from our community. How can they get to the point where the voices in the community are also a part of the conversation. So I've been spending a lot of time in those spaces. So we're having a good time, like Theo said. I mean, session is on steroids. It's crazy, but it's exciting, and I see some things that I believe are going to benefit our people, and that's what we are all about. Let's see. I was looking to see if Flockamy had something in relation to me. Issue groups, make sure that you connect with Flockamy on the issue groups. One of the things that we're trying to do is get the council members more engaged in the work. And that means that you all have to come forward and join committees, be a part of the issue group, be out there Juneteenth, telling people how, about the work that we're doing and how they can get involved. And so we want to do this together. We're better together and we're more impactful together. So just excited still to be here and excited about my team and sad that my chair is leaving me. And like I said, stay tuned for an announcement. We're looking at maybe doing something as a part of the June meeting. So make sure you put the June meeting on your calendar to attend. That will be in person, and we'll get to you early enough so that you can navigate your time. So that's about it, Madam Chair.
Awesome. Thank you. Lots of stuff. I mean, hopefully you all are hearing as we're hearing the staff reports. I mean, lots of information that's out there. Just reminders as you all, hear about things that are going on in the community, and your community. And it's not just, kind of the Twin Cities metro area, but we have Carl from Duluth, Representative Hudson, that's kind of Albertville area, so just making sure that we're kind of hitting everywhere. Are there any announcements? So any events that are coming up or any announcements that people want to make?
This is Jude, Madam Chair. This is just something based on what Edie just spoke about. As we go to this event and as we interact with the community, how do we promote what the council is doing? So some of us who have been here for a while, we know, where the council has come from and all the changes and improvement, thanks to the staff and all the people and board members doing great job. But we know we do have annual report that gives us a summary of all the things we've done for the year. If we can have like just a scorecard, just maybe a page that the staff can easily, enumerate all the things we do, very easy for the community to understand. For instance, if we say that we supported a policy or a bill, so what does it mean to a community member who may not know what we do know? So how do they see it, and then they will connect with that? So something very simple, something pointing to the numbers of what we are doing and how it translates to improving the lives of Blacks in Minnesota. So something that we can easily share when we go to this event. So I know sometimes we do have the annual report, but it's a lot. So something very easy, one page, we can easily have wherever we're going, and we can easily share with them. And if they ask us, actually, for some of us who who do multiple things and may not remember immediately how to answer, we can just look at it and say, hey, we were able to do this and that, and this is what the result that it brings to the community. So I think that part of the marketing that we don't usually have as an organization, but I think it's very important to demonstrate the work we're doing and connect really, because sometimes the community will be like, what do you do for me? How do I benefit from what you are doing in the council? So those questions will easily be answered with such simple illustration of what we are doing and the way that they will understand and relate to what we do.
No, thank you for that, Jude. And Linda, I don't know if you want to speak to a little bit of what he just said.
I do actually, and I thought Flockamy was going to put something in the chat. I think she started typing. So we do have a one-pager that will be coming out shortly. NECA Creative put it together, and it was part of our annual report proposal. So what we'll do is, especially with you, Jude, is to send that out so you guys can take a look at it. But it is a document that talks about our community engagement. It talks about our policies and priorities, and how and our involvement in the legislative process. There's some information about our mission. So there's a few things. So we will get that sent out. So you guys can take a look at it, and then if we need to make changes, maybe not for this year because the timing is short, but for next year, if we get the feedback, we can make sure that we have that information handy. But that's a good point. People, yeah, the report is beautiful. We will have organizations that will read the report, but the average lay person, if they're out at an event to get the annual report, they're probably going to leave it somewhere.
Yeah.
So the one pager, they can fold it up, put it in their pocket or their purse or whatever. So good point, Council Member Nadi. So I do have an event too. Yeah. So there's an event on Thursday, looks like Thursday, May 11th on the steps of the Minnesota State Capitol. And I just heard about this. I haven't even sent this to the team yet, but it's all about public safety. And there's a number of people, looks like the churches, Stair Step, March for Our Lives. So it's the group who is really trying to stem the community violence. So that's this Thursday, May 11th at 4:30 at the Capitol, on the steps of the Capitol. So.
All right. Any other announcements? All right. Well, with that, if I can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Council Nadi.
Is there a second?
Second to hear.
Awesome. And we don't need to vote, so we are officially adjourned. We'll see you all next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can the staff stay on for one quick second? And bye, Joseph. It's always good to see you. So again, make sure you